Masechet Kiddushin, Daf Ayin Het. Amar Rav Yehuda, Kohen Gadol be'almana lokesh shetayim. Achat mishum lo yikach, ve'achat mishum lo yechalel. Rav Yehuda has a chidush that when a Kohen Gadol has relations with an almana, he doesn't get lashes not just once, but actually twice. One on account of lo yikach. It says that Kohen Gadol cannot take an almana. Can means we'll see if it means marry, have bi'ah. Okay, that's for taking her. And the other is lo yechalel. In the act of having relations with this almana, it makes her prohibited from being with a kohen afterwards, and so that itself is a separate prohibition. So he's liable on two counts. Now we ask, wait a second, there should be a third count. It's the continuation of that pasuk. Not only does the woman become pasul kehuna, also if they have a child, that child also will be a halal. So why not get three counts of lashes? And the answer is bishelo gamar biato. It's a case where he didn't complete intercourse and so did not result in a child. But in fact, if he would complete the act and it would result in a child, then he would be liable actually to three counts. So once for the act itself, once for making her pasul, and once a third time for the child that would be pasul. Okay, Mativ Rava challenges Rav Yehuda. Almana u'grusha lo kemishum shenei shemot. Ma'lav shenei shemot v'tula. A Mishnah in Masechet Makot says that if a Kohen Gadol has relations with a woman who is both an almana and a gedusha. She's both. She was almanah from one guy, then gerusha from another guy. So he gets lashes on two counts, two prohibitions. One is almanah and one is gerusha. So doesn't that mean two and not more? And according to you, it should be two for each. And so he answers, La shnei shemot al zeh u'shnei shemot al zeh. In fact, what the Mishnah means is going to get lashes twice for this prohibition, almana, and twice for gerusha, right? Each one, in fact, is going to have a lo yikach and lo yechalel aspect, so he'll get lashes, in fact, 4 times. Okay, Rav Yehuda, what are you going to do with the continuation of that Mishnah in Masechet Makot that says Gerusha v'chalusa no chayav ela achat? If Kohen has relations with a woman who is both a Gerusha and a chalusa, Gerusha from one man and chalusa from another, he's only liable on one count. The reason here, as we're going to see in a second, is that the prohibition of a Kohen to be with a chalusa is only derabanan. It's derivative from Gerusha. A chalusa is very similar to a gerusha, and therefore it is not gonna. These gerusha and chalusa will have only one count of relation of liability. Hachika so why only one? Rav Yehuda, according to you, it should be 2 counts, right? Even just for gerusha by itself, it would be 2 counts. And so this is what it means, that he is liable only for one prohibition, but in fact it'll be 2 sets of lashes, and so they're also because of lo yikach and lo yechalel. So the point there is just that it's one. You only count the gerusha, and not for the. You don't get lashes for the chalusa separately. Okay, now we just assumed that the reason why you only get lashes for gerusha not chalusa is because the prohibition of a kohen with a chalusa is rabbanan. Chalusa is rabbanan. Is that true? V'atanya gerusha and ela gerusha chalusa minayin tamud lomar ve'isha. There's a braita that says, I know a kohen cannot marry gerusha. I would only know gerusha. How about a chalusa? Since it says ve'isha, so that vav says, and also there's another woman that also kohen can't marry, so that comes to include a chalusa. Since you're learning it from a derasha, from a pasuk, that may suggest that this is a deoraita. This is an important assumption, that if you're learning it from pasuk, then it must be a deoraita, even if you're learning it from an extra word or letter or one of the midot. Now we answer midrabanan ukras machta be'alma. In fact, the prohibition of a kohen with a chalusa is only drabanan, and the fact that we brought a pasuk here as a source, that's not actually a source. That's not really where it's derived from. Rather, this is asmachta, it's just a support. You could understand support as meaning a mnemonic device, so that when you come across, the vav, that's to come chalusa, even though it's like Rabbanan. Or it could be support as a authoritative support. If the rabbi said it, they want to get a little extra support. So even though they know that's not really in the Torah, by connecting it with something in Torah, that will give it greater authority. Amar Abaye, Kidesh lokeh, Baal lokeh. Kidesh lokeh mishum lo yikach, Baal lokeh mishum lo yichalel. So Abaye really building on what Rav Yehuda said, that there's two liabilities. Abaye explains that these two liabilities come at two different points. If a Kohen in a permitted relationship, if he does Kiddushin, he gets Malkut for that. And then if he has relations, he gets the second Malkut for that. The first one for Kiddushin is Lo Yikach, Kicha, right, is talking about doing Kiddushin. That's one count. And the other one, Lo Yechalel, she does not become prohibited until there's Bi'ah. And so each of these stages gets its own malkut, and if he just did one, then he would only get one of the one. If he just only did kiddushin, then he would only get one. Rava Amar Baal lokeh, lo Baal eno lokeh, mishum dichtiv lo yikach velo yechalel, ma'atam lo yikach mishum lo yechalel. Rava says he would not get malkut just for kiddushin, but rather only for bi'ah. If he didn't do bi'ah, he would not get malkut, because the pasuk says don't do kiddushin, and don't make her profane. Why can't you do kiddushin? Because then it will lead to her being profane through bi'ah. So he says that if you do both steps, then you get both two sets of lashes. But if you do only kiddushin, then no lashes. So that's the big difference. Abaye says one for step one, another lashes for step two, and Rava says you get nothing for step one, but but they only accumulate, and you get both lashes for step two. ומודה אביי מחזיר גירושתו, שאם קידש ולא בעל, שאינו לוקה, לקחתה להיות לא לאישה מרחמנה והלקה. Now, Abaye agrees. Abaye said that you would get lashes for Kiddushin by itself. Usually, that's for step one. But he would agree that if someone is married, then they get divorced, and she goes and marries somebody else, and then she gets divorced from that and comes back to original husband, that's prohibited. But if a person returns to his gerusha and he did kiddushin only, then no malkut. Even though in general, Abaye says you get malkut just for kiddushin, in this case not, because here the pasuk specifically says lekachta, to marry her, to be his wife. So only if it's to marry her and to be his wife, only if the kiddushin leads to marriage, meaning consummation through marital relations. And so in this case, since they only did kiddushin and it didn't lead yet to full marriage, there's no liability. So Abaye would agree in that case it's more lenient. And Rava, even though Rava says that you get malkut for bi'ah after kiddushin. In other words, you don't get malkut for kiddushin itself, but for kiddushin and then bi'ah. But even Rava would agree that if a kohen gadol almana, if he did bi'ah even without kiddushin, he still gets malkut, because there it says velo yechalel zar'o be'amav amar chamana varehu chilel, that he this is regarding kohen gadol with almana, should not profane his offspring, and here if it indeed results in offspring, then the offspring would be profaned, and therefore he gets lashes even though it was not preceded by kiddushin. Still he gets lashes for bi'ah alone. So Rava is more machmir in this case than he would usually be. And both Abaye and Rava agree that if someone returns his gerusha after she was with someone else, that if he did just bi'ah and no kiddushin, that there's no malkut, because as the pasuk said here, lekachta liot leisha, this is lekachta, only through kiddushin that's where the Torah says if you did Kiddushin and Bi'ah, that's where you would get lashes. So we have two laws about Machazir Gerushato. This one is if you did Kiddushin only and not Bi'ah, so everyone would agree, no lashes. And also if you did Bi'ah without Kiddushin, also everybody would agree that this is no lashes. So Machazir Gerushato is more lenient than other laws where you only get lashes. Everyone agrees you only get lashes if you do both Kiddushin and Bi'ah. Rabbi Yehuda Omer, Bat Ger Zachar Kebat Halal. Back to the Mishnah that's quoted Rabbi Yehuda, who was a Machmir opinion, and he said that a daughter of a male convert, even if the wife is fully kosher, but the father is a convert, the daughter is treated like a halal, cannot marry a kohen. Just like a bat halal would be a halala. Tanya, Rabbi Yehuda Omer, Bat Ger Zachar Kebat Halal Zachar, Vadin Noten. Have a braita where Rabbi Yehuda is going to repeat this law and give a derivation from a Kal Vachomer. Rabbi Yehuda says that the daughter of a male Ger is like the daughter of a male Halal. She's not fit to marry a Kohen, and we learn this from a Kal Vachomer. Me Halal sheba mitipa keshera bito pesula, Ger sheba mitipa pesula, and odin shebito pesula. If a halal that comes from a kosher seed, meaning the father's Jewish, the father's just not a halal, but he's Jewish, and yet the daughter is invalid. All the more so, a convert who was born from a non-kosher seed, that's even worse. Therefore, certainly the daughter should be pisula. But then we say, wait a second, that's not equivalent. A halal was produced from a prohibited relationship, is born from a sin. That's not true of a convert. A convert, two non-Jews, they can get together and have a child. There's nothing wrong with that. So the non-Jew is not born doesn't result from a sin. So that's why maybe a halal is worse, that it gets passed on, and a daughter of a ger should not be penalized. Kohen gadol ba'amana yochiach sheni seirato ba'avela pito pisula. We'll bring a third law, Kohen gadol with an almana. That child is invalid, even though the Kohen gadol was born fine. He was not from sin. So even if someone is not born from sin, still the pisula, the daughter can be pisula. So you see that the being born from sin is not a relevant factor. But then we say no, not necessarily. Kohen gadol ba'amana can be atoba avera. But the Kohen gadol ba'amana, that itself is a prohibited relationship. Kohen gadol was born fine, but this relationship that he has is prohibited, which is not true for a ger. He converted and married someone that he's permitted to marry, a Jew. Ger is permitted to marry a regular Jew, and so there's no sin there. So really, you can't compare that, right? So then we say, well, halal yochiach, because halal also can marry kosher women that doesn't involve any transgression, and yet the halal status, it does go to the children. So now we bring all those examples together. V'chazaradin lo ri'izeh kiri'izeh. In fact, even though the Kohen Gadol and the Halal, each of them have a difference, a different aspect, a different flaw to them that makes them not comparable to the convert, nevertheless, if we bring them all together, Hasada Shaveh Shabahen Shenan Berov Kahal, Afani Avi Etageh Sheno Berov HaKahal Ubito Pasul. So the common denominator between them is that they're not like most of the congregation, right? Each of them has a flaw, either that the act that they do is prohibited, or they're born from a sinful act. Okay, but those cancel each other out because one has one and the other one does. One has it, the other one doesn't, and that one has it and this one doesn't. But what they have in common is that they're not like most of the congregation. Also, I'll bring the convert also is not like most of the congregation, and therefore, just like in Kohen Gadol and Halal, the child is a halal. So too, for a convert, the child should also be a halal. It's kind of loose logic, just bringing any kind of flaw together. But all right, if we bring it together, the point is that if someone is born Jewish, halal, and yet passes on halal to the next generation, all the more so a convert that seems like a bigger flaw, that should pass on to a halal status to the next generation, according to the Yehuda. But now we say, hold on, this is too loose, this logic. Kohen Gadol and halal both have an aspect of transgression, either the Kohen Gadol to Amanah themselves, or halal that he was born from a sinful transgression. So, you know what? Let's fix this. Lo tema Kohen Gadol b'Amanah yochiach, leave out the Kohen Gadol Amanah, ela ema Misri Rishon yochiach. An Egyptian convert of the first generation, that's a better example, because an Egyptian convert of the first generation is allowed to marry another Egyptian convert of the first generation, for example, and yet their child cannot marry a Kohen. In fact, cannot marry into Kahal at all, because it's only second generation. It's not permitted until 3 generations. And so this will prove that the halal that passes it on to the next generation is not because the halal was born from a sinful relationship, because here is someone who's not born from a sinful relationship, and yet the child still cannot marry a Kohen. But we reject this. Yeah, but the Mitzri Rishon is even worse, because they can't marry. Not only can they not marry a Kohen, they can't marry anybody who's Kahal, and so that is much worse. Much worse than even a regular ger. Halal yochiach. Okay, but halal will prove that it doesn't matter, because a halal can marry into Kahal, and yet it passes on to the next generation. So v'chazar adin, and those can cancel each other out. Lo hasad השווה שבין שאינן ברוב הקהל וביתו פסולה, אף אני אביא את הגר שאינו ברוב קהל וביתו פסולה. They each have an aspect that the other one doesn't have, but what they have in common is that both the Mitzri Rishon and with the Mitzri Rishon and a halal are not like most of the congregation. They each have some kind of flaw. So I'm going to compare that to a convert who also has some kind of flaw and not like everybody else, and therefore the pisula, the daughter will be pisula, cannot marry a kohen. But we reject this too. Hold on, in those examples, those people will make the woman, if they marry a woman, they will make that woman herself pisula to be with a kohen. If either a halal or a mitzri rishon marries a woman, then that woman cannot be with a can then not marry a kohen afterwards. Is that true for a ger? And the answer is actually, according to the Yehuda, it is. The Yehuda, ger nami posel b'biato u'maital b'masat b'haydina. Since the Yehuda happens to be of the opinion that a ger who marries a woman makes her unfit to be to marry a kohen, so therefore this is a good proof for the Yehuda's original law that a father who is a ger will make his daughter unfit to marry a kohen. Okay, next, Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov Omer ger. Rabbi Eliezer Yaakov was of the opinion that only if both parents are gerim, then the daughter cannot marry a kohen. But if one or the other is Jewish, then that's okay. Tanya Rabbi Shimon ben Yochai Omer, Giyoret pechota mibat shalosh v'yom echad keshera lekehuna shene'emar, v'chotav banashim hachayu lachem, v'lo Pinchas haya imahen, v'rabanan hachayu lachem la'avadim l'shvachos. Now we're going to see yet another opinion. It's even more lenient. Rabbi Shimon ben Yochai says that a girl who converts less than 3 years old in one day can marry a kohen. What's the whole problem with a convert marrying a kohen? Is that if she's older, then we assume that she was a zonah, she had promiscuous relationships, and therefore once she converts, she's a convert, but she was promiscuous before, so she's zonah. But if she's less than 3 years old, then there is no possibility of her having any sexual acts at that age, before 3 years old, and therefore she herself is permitted. Now, what's this proof? Because it says in War Against Midian that all the girls, the little girls, you can let live. Now, what are you going to do with them? Marry them, right? And Pinchas was with them, and he's a kohen, so you see Pinchas would be allowed to marry a convert if as long as she converted and capturing them and bringing them into Bnei Israel came together with conversion. And so eventually when they grew up, Pinchas would have married one of them. So you see that a Kohen is allowed even to marry a convert himself, as long as she converted before 3 years old. So this is much more lenient than the previous opinions. Not only the daughter of a convert, even a convert herself, a Kohen is allowed to marry as long as she converted when she was less than 3 years old. Now, Rabbanan, what are they going to do with this pasuk? Doesn't say that you're going to keep the girls, and Pinchas is one of them, is there. What's he going to do with these girls? And he says, no, let them live, so to be avadim u'shfachot, not to marry. So that's what they did with them. That's how Rabbanan could explain that. V'chulan mikra chad darshu, almana u'grusha lo yikhu lahem lenashim, ki im betulot mizera bet Yisrael. Now the Gemara says that all the opinions that we have, it's actually 3 opinions in the Mishnah, and the Bishman Bar Yochai that we just introduced, is 4 different opinions about whether a Kohen can marry a convert or the daughter of a convert. They all derive, and they can all explain it, from this pasuk in Yehezkel. It's a difficult pasuk in Yehezkel that says in Almanah in the Gerusha, they cannot marry. So this seems to be in a simple reading that all Kohanim cannot marry an Almanah or a Gerusha. Now this is strange because really in the Torah it says only a Kohen Gadol cannot marry an Almanah, and here it sounds like all Kohanim cannot marry an Almanah. This is a contradiction. It's a big problem. The rabbis were going to put Sefer Yehezkel in Genizah until Shmuel HaKatan was able to go in an attic and not come out until he resolved all the contradiction between Yehezkel and the Torah. So this is a big one, and we're going to resolve this contradiction in a minute. But first, let's just concentrate. Let's assume it's talking about a Kohen Gadol, which will be the conclusion, this part of the pasuk. So it says Almanah Gerusha lo yikhu, even though it says in plural. Okay, Kohanim Gedolim cannot take them as nashim. Rather, a Kohen Gadol can only marry betulot mizera bet Yisrael. Okay, so it could be talking about Kohen Gadol, but we're going to talk about Kohanim in general, that they have to marry someone mizera bet Yisrael. What does that mean? So now let's apply it to each opinion. Rabbi Yehuda sabar adiit kol zera mi'Yisrael. Rabbi Yehuda was the most stringent, and he says that all of the seed has to be Jewish born. Both parents have to be Jewish born. If the father is a ger, then the daughter will be pesula. That's how we learned it. All parents have to be Jewish. Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov savar mi zera afilu biksad zera. He says as long as some of the seed is Jewish, that's fine. Meaning, as long as either parent is Jewish, if one parent is Jewish and one is a ger, that's fine. The daughter can marry a Kohen. Only if both parents are gerim, were born not Jewish and gerim, and have a daughter, only then is the daughter pesula lekehuna. That's the second opinion. Rabbi Yosef sabar mishe nizra'u beYisrael. Rabbi Yosef says that only the daughter of 2 converts, even the daughter of 2 converts rather, is permitted to marry. In other words, it doesn't get passed on. Even the daughter of 2 converts can marry a Kohen. So he explains this to me. Mizera bet Yisrael, as long as the child was conceived when the parents were Jewish. If they conceived when they were not Jewish before they converted, then that would be a problem. But now they're Jewish, so the kid was born from Jewish parents. The daughter was conceived from Jewish parents as after they were converted. So therefore, can marry. That's even more lenient. And finally, Rabbi Shimon ben Yochai sabar mishe nizra'u betuleha beYisrael. He says even a convert herself can marry a Kohen as long as her betulim was formed when she was Jewish. So as long as she was less than 3 years old when she converted, and the hymen doesn't form until she's 3 years old, and therefore she herself can marry a Kohen. All right, so that's how they all learn it. Now back to the pasuk. Amar le Rav Nachman Rava, hay keraresha bekohen gadol v'sefa bekohen hejot. Let's look at the pasuk inside to appreciate the question. Starts off almana grusha lo yikhu lahem lenashim kim betulot mizera bet Yisrael. So this even though it's said in plural and it looks like it's talking about Kohanim, but that would contradict the Torah. So, therefore, the first half of the pasuk must be talking about a Kohen Gadol cannot marry an Almana and a Gerusha, right? But rather a Betula, Mizera Bet Yisrael. Fine, that's Kohen Gadol. But then the rest of the pasuk says, Almana Shetia Almana Mikohen Yikachu. This person, a Kohen, can, I'll say it's Kohen Gadol, where they were continuing, but a Kohen Gadol can marry an Almana as long as she was an Almana from a Kohen, meaning that if you have a woman who was an Almana, who was married to a Kohen and then became an Almana, that's permitted. Only if she was married to Yisrael, became Almana, then not permitted. Well, that can't be talking about a Kohen Gadol. This must be talking about any Kohen, because a Kohen Gadol cannot marry any Almana. So this seems to be a stringency that we don't otherwise know about Kohanim, that a Kohen, like, if she was married to a Kohen, okay, she was high class status and she's worthy of another Kohen marrying, but if she was married to Israel, then she's like, that's already tainted, already low class with Israel, not good enough, that Almanah is not good enough to marry a Kohen. Well, in any case, this has to be talking about a regular Kohen. So do you ever have a case where, and within one pasuk, it changes referent right in the middle? It starts with the Kohen Gadol and then switches without telling us to talk about a regular Kohen. Amar le'in, he said, yes, we have such an example. Ve'chatab kerachi. So Rahman says, where do you see a pasuk that would be like that? Amar le'in, dichti, v'ned Elohim terim yichbe u'shmuel shoche be'echal Hashem. V'alo en yeshiva ba'azara ela malchei bet David belvad. Ela, ned Elohim terim yichbe be'echal Hashem u'shmuel shoche bimkomo. You have this pasuk that says, before the light went out, which before we understood figuratively, before the light of Eli went out. But here it could be also literally before the lamp that's in the Mishkan went out. Shemuel was already sleeping behechal Hashem. It sounds like literally Shemuel is sleeping in the hechal. Now, sometimes people will sleep in the hechal to get prophecy, and that's in fact is the context of the story. But then we ask, but you're not allowed. No, you're not allowed to sit down in the Azara unless you're a king from the house of David. Never mind lying down. You're not allowed to lie down, sit down. It's not respectful. You have to be standing up. So how could Shemuel be lying down and sleeping in the hechal? It's impossible. Ela, rather, you should read it like this: Ned Elokim tenem ichba behechal Hashem. In other words, take the words Ushmuel shochev and just put them in brackets and say, read it as follows: Ned Elohim terem yichbe behechal Hashem, and then separately Ushmuel shochev. Right, where was he sleeping? Outside the temple, wherever, in his bedroom, somewhere in a separate area. So here you have a pasuk that switches reference right in the middle. The behechal Hashem goes on what the beginning of the pasuk, not on Shemuel. Shemuel's not sleeping behechal Hashem. Rather, Ned Elokim was behechal Hashem. So in this case also the peshat is not so, but we have a halachic difficulty, so we have to read it against the normal syntax, and so too we have to do that in the pasuk in Yehezkel, because the simple reading is against halacha. So we have to read it against the normal syntax. Next, V'almana shetia almana mikohen yikachu. Mikohen in Misrael la. When this pasuk in Yehezkel, what does it mean? Because it literally means, as we just said, that a kohen, now we're talking about a regular kohen, can only marry an almana from a kohen. Now, is that true? Only from an almana of a kohen? But if it was an almana, if she was married to Israel and he died, a kohen cannot take it? Hachika amar, mi kohen yikachu, mishar kohanim yikachu. Let's look at the pasuk inside to appreciate this derasha. If we read this simply, it would be almana shetia almana mikohen. You should put the comma here, after mikohen yikachu. And almana, who is an almana from a kohen, that a kohen can marry. The problem with that is then that sounds like only if she was an almana mikohen. So instead, this derasha says move the comma to here, which is actually what the ta'amim here do with the zakef katon on the almana. So that becomes the primary stop, and you read it like this: almana sheti almana. Now that's a tautology, but all right. So any almana. Mikohen Yikachu can marry from among the Kohanim. Not a Kohen Gadol, but other Kohanim can marry, and therefore that would mean any almana. So with this rereading, it fits with the halacha, right? From other Kohanim, he can take Tanyana Mehachi, and there's a Braita that reads it as well like this: Mikohen Yikachu, Mishar Kohanim Yikachu. Any almana can marry a Kohen, just not a Kohen Gadol. Rabbi Yehuda Omer, min hamasiim lekeuna yikachu. Rabbi Yehuda has a different explanation of this pasuk, and he says it means that a widow who is a widow of someone whose daughter would be able to marry a Kohen, then another Kohen can take that widow. See, in this reading, you can actually leave the syntax as it is. Almana shetiyeh almana mi Kohen, as long as almana from a Kohen, a proper Kohen, so proper that his daughter would be able to marry, so then you can take that almana. And that's his reading. Rabbi Yehuda Tamed Amar bat ger zachar kebat halal zachar. Kol she'ata noseh bito ata noseh almanato, v'chol she'ata noseh bito ata noseh almanato. And that fits with Rabbi Yehuda's opinion in general, who said that, number one, that a daughter of a convert is like a daughter of a halal. That's what we dealt with before. And here the relevant one, that anyone where you could marry anyone who you can marry his daughter, you can marry his almana, meaning a kohen. If in any case where a kohen can marry someone's daughter, he can marry his almana. And if there's any case where he cannot marry his daughter because of some problem with him or that marriage, then you cannot marry the almana either. And so this fits exactly with his explanation of this pasuk. Rabbi Yosef Omer, Af ger shenasa giyoret. Now Rabbi Yosef says that if even two converts marry, the daughter is permitted to a Kohen because the daughter was conceived while they were Jewish. Amar, so he was lenient. Amar Rav Hamnuna mishmei de'ula. Halacha ke'Rabbi Yosef v'chanamar Rabba bar Chana. Halacha ke'Rabbi Yosef. So halacha is like Rabbi Yosef according to these rabbis. Umiyom shechara bet hamikdash nagu kohanim silsul be'atzman ke'Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov. Even though that was the original halacha from the time that the Bet HaMikdash was destroyed, the kohanim take upon themselves a more stringent custom, especially maybe without the Bet HaMikdash. They want to promote their status as Kohanim and not lose out on it, and so they would be more stringent to be like Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov, that one of the parents at least has to be born Jewish. Amar Rav Nachman, Amar li Huna, Bali Malech Morim lo Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov Nasa, and Mosimotam imenu Rabbi Yosef. Rav Nachman says, Huna told him, Rav Huna told him, that if someone asks lechatechila what they should do, we tell them you should follow Rabbi Eliezer and make sure at least one of the parents is Jewish before that daughter marries a Kohen. But b'di'avad, if someone already married someone who's a daughter of both converts, as long as she was born after the parents, she was conceived after the parents converted and married. If they already married, then we don't force them to get divorced, because essentially the halacha is like Rabbi Yosef. Mishnah, Haomer beni zeh mamzer eno ne'eman. Afilu shnehem modim ala uba shemehem mamzer hu enem ne'emanim. Rabbi Yehuda Omer ne'emanim. A man comes and says, "This is my son. He is a mamzer." We don't believe him to make him a mamzer, right? Who says? Is in general a testimony from a relative is not believed. And even if both parents say that this fetus here that's not born yet is a mamzer, they are not believed, right? So the first case sounds like it's talking about after the kid is born, and now it's saying even if it's just a fetus, and even if both parents say no good, they is not believed. Rabbi Yehuda says we do believe them. Okay, let's see. What's the second part adding to the first, that even both of them? This is adding a couple of laws. Not only the father is not believed, because the father can never be sure who the parents are, right? The father may not know the full story. The father wouldn't know if she was with another guy. Even the mother, who she should know, is not believed to make the child pasul, make a child mamzer. ולמה בעיה דאית לחזקה דקשרות למהמנה, אלא אפילו בר דאינה מדלת לחזקה דקשרות למהמנה. And not only a child that's already born. Once someone is born, they have a chazakah. People have a chazakah that we assume they're kosher until they're proven not so. So not only if the kid is already born and however old he is, where he has a chazakah, we don't believe the parents to say is mamzer. Even a fetus that doesn't exist yet, doesn't have a chazakah that is kosher yet, still the parents are not believed, not credible to say that the child is a mamzer. You'd have to bring witnesses that come and say, we saw that she went and committed adultery and so on. You'd need witnesses in order to create a mamzer. Rabbi Yehuda Omer ne'emanim. Rabbi Yehuda says that they are believed. What's his source? Kedetanya yakir yakirenu la'acherim. It comes from this pasuk in Devarim that says ki et habechor ben asinuai yakir latet lo pi shenaim. Father cannot favor the beloved son over the hated the son of the hated wife. Rather, he has to the bechor, whoever is the firstborn, even if it's of the sinuah wife, yakir. He has to recognize and give him double. Now, simply just means recognize it. The Rasha says recognize to others. In other words, testify to others that here it is. Here, this is my son. So you see that the father is believed to say, this is my son. So he's believed to say, this child of mine, this child over here is a mamzer. He was born from some illicit relationship. Mikan amar Rabbi Yehuda, Ne'eman adam lomar ze b'ni bechor. Choshev she'eman adam lomar ze b'ni bechor, kach ne'eman adam lomar ze ben gerusha v'ze ben chalusa. Hachem omerim eno ne'eman. So based on this, Rabbi Yehuda says, a father is believed to say, this is my son and he's the bechor. So just like he's believed to say, this is my son and he's the bechor, so too, that's for positive, because he's going to get double, so too he's believed to say, this my son is a ben gerusha, or a ben chalusa, to point out some flaw in him, and in the Mishnah, the flaw would be that he's a mamzer, so the father is believed in all these things. And Chamim say, no, not believed. Now, question. Amar le Rav Nachman bar Yitzchak le Rava. Bishlam Rabbi Yehuda hainu dichtiv yakir. Ela banan yakir lamali. I understand Rabbi Yehuda, that's why it says yakir, to say that the father is believed, not just to recognize himself, but to tell other people, I recognize him, to testify about it. But Chachamim say, not believed. So then what does he use? What does he do with this pasuk? And the answer is, besarich hekera. In a case where it's necessary, right? Where the firstborn is unknown, we don't know which one is it, and so it's needed for him to testify. Now, for what reason would he need to testify that this is the firstborn and not the firstborn? Like, what practical difference would it make? To give him double. So then we ask, of course he'd be believed. You don't need a pasuk to tell me that a father is believed. Peshita, lama likera, migo deiba emetva le matana, mila yahave le. Of course the father is believed to say this is my firstborn because it's based on amigo. We should believe him anyway, even without the pasuk. Because if he wanted, the father, while he's alive, can give this particular son double. He can give anything he wants as a present to anyone he wants. So couldn't he give it? So since he could give it anyway to this particular person, he could give double to them. And so if he comes and says, oh, this is my son and this is my bechor, so certainly he should be believed. You don't need a pasuk to tell me that he would be believed. So the answer is, b'nechasim shenaflu la'achar mikan. We need the pasuk to teach us that we believe the father, even in a case where, let's say the father testified this is a bechor, and then other property came into his possession that wasn't there at that time. So the first time the father says, this is my bechor, oh yeah, we'll believe him because he could give this child double as a gift. Fine, so we'll believe him for that. But then, what if that future property comes into possession after he gives it as a gift, at which he didn't give double to this this person? So he wouldn't be believed for that because now he no longer is giving it. He can't give a gift for the future, and so he didn't give that away as a gift. And so let's say he gets other possession, and then he's not able to give it as a gift anymore. He dies, whatever. So you would need that this pasuk to teach me that if he said once before and testified this is a bechor, then even money that comes into his possession in the future, also that child will get double. So that's why we need the pasuk. So that works, except for Rabbi Meir. Rabbi Meir thinks that a person can transfer to someone else even things that don't exist in the world yet, that he doesn't even have in his possession. So then the father could say, listen, I'm giving you double as a present of everything that I have and everything that will come into my possession. So then there's no problem, because he could give it he could give things for the future. And the answer is shenaflu lo kishu goses. No, we're talking about a case where the father is already goses, he's on his deathbed, and even according to the Bimir, it says someone can transfer things in the future. He agrees that that's someone who is healthy can do that, but someone who is goses cannot transfer things that didn't come yet into his possession. And so for that case, we would need to believe him that he is this is the firstborn, so that any possessions that come into his possession in the future, which wouldn't be able to be transferred as a gift, would still go to the firstborn as a double, only because we have the pasuk. Otherwise, the migo wouldn't work, and we wouldn't be able to believe him. Baruch Adonai Le'olam. Amen ve'amen.